told us that I think the first drawings, either they went to the studio or they went to GALE, and I think she sent a note back saying they looked like circumcised penises.
Well, yeah, some of them were, yeah. But it's hard, given what you're doing, not to immediately think of a penis, you know. I mean, what do you make the head of the thing look like? So, yeah, that was funny. That was funny. That would have been a comedy, no matter what. That would have been a big, you know, laugh riot in the desert. Probably made a lot more money, too. I don't know.
Were you on set most of the time during?
Yeah. Yeah, Steve and I were there.
And what was the atmosphere like on set?
It was good. People were good. Everybody was treated well, with respect. It's kind of unusual in Hollywood. And we just always treated everybody really well.
What are the funny moments that you can remember from that?
Well, there's tons of funny moments when things go wrong, because that's the nature of filmmaking. You're trying to, you know, capture something on film that keeps going wrong. There was a moment when Ivo Cristante, our production designer, Ivo designed and built the whole town. There's no town there, it's just desert. We were allowed to go in there. The Bureau of Land Management let us go in there and build a pretend town. And he did that and a number of other things. But one thing was we needed, for certain scenes, clusters of giant boulders in the desert. And there are rocks such as those around there. And in some of the scenes, those are real rocks. But in certain places, you know, the rocks were not in the right place. We needed vast open space, and we needed a bunch of rocks in the middle. So Ivo designed and built rocks, big, 20 feet high, 30 feet long. And they were, I guess, fiberglass or something. They're really big shells. So they're completely empty. And he had them positioned out in the desert, and we all got in a Jeep or whatever. He wanted to show us, these were the rocks they're stranded on. The rocks they do the pole vaulting sequence from one to another. And they were all out there in the desert. We drove out there. It was a very windy day. Drove out there at the end of the shooting day. And the giant boulders, every one of them was rolling across the desert like giant sagebrush, because they were lighter. They were like almost as light as balloons, and they were hollow. It was hilarious. It was a great image. You know, if we could have used it, we would, but that was funny.
In the writing of the script, you created some really, really strong female roles for Reba and for Finn.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of dispenses with the traditional horror tropes where women just scream or get slaughtered.
Well, that was
a conscious decision?
Yeah, one of the first things when we said sci-fi, subterranean monsters, people trapped in a small town, all of that. You know, the first things that come up are all of the cliches that you know. Of course, Steve knew them better than I did, but we knew we didn't want a defenseless female. You know, someone that the lead guy would save, you know. We didn't want a lead guy who was a stiff either. And so, yeah, that was easy to say. We want a woman who knows what she's doing. We needed somebody who could bring some scientific information into the movie and explain some things. And we wanted sort of a love interest. It's okay, it's fine. I mean, it wasn't big on our agenda, but that was fine. Well, let's have the woman be the knowledgeable one, so have her be a grad student, and have her be, you know, kick-ass, as tough as the guys. That's all. That was easy to do. And then Michael Gross's character, Bert Gummer, he was so on the edge that we thought, you know, we should give him a wife who's sort of his keeper. She's the one who, you know, keeps him from going over the edge. I thought that would be funny and sweet, and actually, to some degree, truthful of couples. You see it all the time. One of them balances out the other, and they keep each other from going off the side of the road of life. So that worked out great. Reba was a real surprise.
And from what I've read, she was comfortable about not even wearing much makeup as well, which is, you know.
Yeah, well, it was funny because Universal said to us, I think Reba was recording for Universal or something at the time, I don't know. I knew almost nothing about country music, you know, other than Hank Williams and a couple of people, Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings. That was, I knew nothing about it, nothing. And they said, well, Reba McEntire wants to come in and read for the part. I go, Reba, and then you know, it was explained to me who she was. And oh my God, we're gonna get some woman with this giant bouffant hairdo coming in, ridiculously, absolutely inappropriate kind of character with the long fingernails and all that stuff. And so I walked in the office one day and Reba's sitting in the hallway on a chair and I to say hi and I walked right by her. I didn't know who she was. Just this simple, you know, cute woman, nice looking woman, but just absolutely simple, like she's going to the supermarket, and walked right by her, you know. And but it's Reba, I didn't know. And she came in and she read for the part and she was good. And then I said, I had to just say, you got to understand, we're going to be in the desert. It's going to be filthy. The wind is going to blow. You're going to be chewing sand. It's going to be hot. We're going to do take after take after take with all this special effects. And it's going to really be tough. It's not going to be fun, you know, blah, 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 blah. And she said, no problem. I'll do it. Let's just go do it. Let's do it. I was like, okay. And, you know, she was perfect, you know. She was not a spoiled diva, is what it turned out to be. So she was great. She was a lot of fun. And I remember when we did the first take, her first take, the first take in which she appears and has a line of dialogue. It's when the truck pulls up in front of the general store and they notice the graboid tentacle clutching, you know, underneath the truck. And everybody's there and realizing something's alive out in the desert. And she had a few lines of dialogue, and then Ron calls cut. You know, we got it, and Reba just screams something like, yeah, I'm in the movies. So she knew she was in the film, you know, at that point. It was great. She was just really, really good. Then she goes on to have this TV show that goes on forever, which is great. I mean, she's wonderful. So I like to think we had some part in that. I don't know.
Do you think that graboids are a metaphor for 80s yuppie greed?
Yes. How did you get that? That's fantastic. You're the first one to say that. They're a metaphor. I'll leave it at that. It's a do-it-yourself metaphor. You can fill in whatever you want.
Because if you think about it, it was at the time of, there was a lot going on in the world. It was the end of the Cold War. It was the end of Reagan. It was the end of Thatcher. And was that in your mind when you were writing it?
No. None of that was in my mind. What was in our mind was, wouldn't it be scary if there was a big worm that wanted to eat us? You know, that's what was in our mind. There's something, I mean, the nature of it, you can analyze it and go, well, it's subterranean, so therefore it's a subconscious. You can get into Freud or Jung, I don't know who it would be, and it resonates with you, you know. There's a deep thing, you know, that's something, the unseen, but even more so, not just the unseen out in the woods, but the unseen underneath your very feet, you know. So that obviously had a big impact on people's, you know, relationship with the film, I think, just as Jaws obviously was. And it was seen as, oh, a ripoff of Jaws, you know, it's Jaws, but in the dirt instead of the water. I understand that. But yeah, that really, really helped. The other thing about them being unseen, obviously, if you have very little money to make a movie, that's a real economical way to have an antagonist. You don't see them until they suddenly jump out or burst up through the floor of the store or through the ground. So that really helped. You can keep the tension up and keep the sense of the presence of the creature up to maximum without seeing it at all. So that was great. If there was another way to do that, we would have done it since then, but we couldn't figure out anything else. We had to then start, in the sequels we did, we had to then start showing the antagonistic creature of the week, whatever it was. They weren't hiding under the ground. It made it more difficult. But then by then we had CGI, which helped us out.
And, you know, that whole thing of like, it's not what you see, but what you feel when you're watching it. It's almost like kind of Hitchcock or something, isn't it?
Well, I don't even know that we were remotely close enough to the sophistication of Hitchcock. It was brilliant. But the idea of, again, it's the unseen. I mean, that's scarier. I mean, it's almost the most frightening, almost up until the point the creature appears, which seems the reverse of what it should be. The thing you fear it's more scary than when it shows up. As they say, when you're afraid of something, move toward it, confront it, then it's okay. If you're running away from it or hiding, it's much scarier. So maybe that has something to do with making it scary. It was important that it was scary, that we weren't laughing the whole time. We'd laugh at the people, some of their comments, but not the fact that the creature was chewing somebody up. That hopefully would not be fun. But psychological stuff, you just feel your way through it, I think.
Yeah, how important was home entertainment in terms of the survival of Tremors?
Well, I think it saved it. I mean, what was interesting about the timing of the Tremors was that I think maybe, I don't know, I haven't done any research, nor will I think it was kind of the last sci-fi monster horror movie, whatever genre you want to stick in it, that was made without any CGI. There was no computer-generated imagery. Everything in that movie is real. It was in front of the camera. Brilliant miniatures by the Skotak brothers, who had worked with Jim Cameron. Again, Tom and Alex, full-size Graboids. Everything that happens is happening. There's no digital anything. Not a pixel in that movie. And it worked, but it worked for a number of reasons. One of it was we all had a really strong background in editing. So we knew we can make this thing seem real and seem like it's really doing what it's supposed to be doing by knowing how to cut. It can be 12 frames of this, 24 frames of this, like 2 seconds of this, and then the camera pans and we cut to this, and you put it together and it really brings it to life. It's filmmaking. It's filmmaking making something work as opposed to animation making something work. And then CGI exploded right after that and became really big, and we used that when we did Tremors 2, 3, and 4. We relied on CGI because we had teeny budgets and that was the way to solve that problem. CGI, of course, got way, way overdone and lost its power, and it's bankrupt, in my opinion. CGI has bankrupted movies, and people, I think, will respond to something that they know is real, that was done real. It's like Buster Keaton doing these amazing gags, and he was always saying, we're not going to cut in the middle of this shot and go to another angle of me rolling down the hill or whatever, because that's the moment the audience stops believing that I'm really doing it. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Really, really do it in front of the camera. It's great. And when you pull it off, it's so much fun. It's fun, but when animators do it, it's like, yeah, of course it looks great.
And I think that that's also a reason why the younger generation are seeing Tremors through new eyes, because that generation that grew up in a pure CGI world,
Yeah.
they look at Tremors and they go, "Holy fuck, this is real. My eyes, it scans as reality."
Nobody's ever said that. That really registers with me. That may be the reason. Yeah, I watched a movie. I don't know I won't name it. A great movie. It was nicely written. So there's a scene with these enemy spacecraft in the sky, hovering over the good guys. And there must have been 20 of them, or 30. Because once you've designed one, you've designed as many as you want. So why just have one or two, It ruined the entire scene, So I just thought it was overdone. It was overkill. There's so much overkill and everybody becomes numb. It's not good filmmaking to rely on technology to that degree. So yeah, maybe it is a fresh experience for young people to see this film, Kind of nice because it was kind of an homage to the old monster movies. So there's something kind of old-fashioned and creaky about it, and that's fun. That's kind of nice. And yet there's a hipness to it as well. I think it's a nice blend.
I just want to talk a bit more about that CGI thing, and because I think there's something in there about the appeal of Tremors with perhaps people 30 and under, and the connection with it being non-CGI. If you could talk a bit about that.
Well, that was interesting that you mentioned that, because I hadn't thought of that. I was saying that I think CGI is way overused because it's such an easy way to solve problems and such a crutch that you could use. And as I was saying, one really cool spaceship in the sky is a great thing, but when you can make 20 of them for the same price, with the same effort, why not put 20 up there? Well, you don't put 20 up there because it's too much. And then nothing has an impact. There is no impact. And so CGI has allowed people to overdo everything to the point of numbing the audience down, and nothing matters anymore. If something blows up, I mean, if you were standing on a street corner and the automobile parked across the street blew up into a fireball, that would be impressive. You would remember that for the rest of your life. You would never forget that. But in a movie, that happens every 3 minutes. Nobody reacts. Those things are just, so it's a way for movies to erode their power, dissipate their power to impress you. And it's a bad thing. And CGI is so brilliant and wonderful, but it's got to be used, it's like a antibiotic. You got to use it carefully. Otherwise, it's going to have no effect. And then what do you do? Well, CGI sucks. Nobody wants to see it. Well, you go back to real stuff. I mean, imagine Buster Keaton standing there in that windstorm in whatever that film was. I should know the title. He's in the windstorm, and the facade of the 3-story house behind him blows off and hinged at the bottom, falls sideways right onto him, and he happens to be standing where the open window lands. It's a brilliant moment. Now do that with a CGI front of the building, and everybody knows it's CGI. It has no impact. It's like it would be like watching cell animation. We know it's not real, so it's not really anything. It might be funny, but it's not really anything. So I have a real problem with it. Yet we've used it, and you try to use it sparingly, but it's powerful things are dangerous.
So do you think that's why Tremors looks fresh today?
I think that's a great theory.
Could you just put that
I subscribe to that theory.
Could you put it into a sentence for me?
I think it's a reasonable theory that younger people seeing Tremors today are relating to it maybe a little bit more subconsciously because it's real. They feel that what they're looking at is what happened in front of the camera, as opposed to somebody animating something, long after the scene was shot and putting it in there. I think maybe they sense it. I don't know, but it's real. It's all real, and I stand by that.
There were simultaneous challenges, like are the pneumatics and the hydraulics going to work? Is the light going to stay because you're outside in the desert? And then thirdly, is it actually going to look right? Because it's been shot in daylight and you've got nowhere to hide.
Yeah, that was the big question.
Can you talk a bit about what that felt like?
Well, the idea to shoot it in daylight, I don't know that it was. I don't remember discussing that, but that may have been because I wasn't paying attention. But we wrote it in the daytime. We're out in the desert. We wrote it. There's some night sequences, but not many. And although I'm sure it came up in conversation, we're in the sunshine all day, but I don't remember it being a big deal. Something we got worried about too much. It worked out fine.
Nancy was worrying about it.
Well, it was good. It was her job to worry because she was really instrumental in the making of that film. But the idea that it's an underground monster, of course, helps you. It doesn't matter. It's not. We don't need it lurking in the shadows. It's under the ground. So I think that's what made it work. And I don't think anybody said it would have been a better movie had it been shot at nighttime. I don't think so. Oh, there's a few night sequences that are creepy because it's nighttime. that certainly helped us.
And again, it goes back to, it's almost like the CGI conversation. You use the nighttime sparingly.
Yeah. I mean, I understand low-budget, scary movies are going to take place in the dark. You're trying to save money, a million reasons to do it. And that's great, that's fine. But if you can do it without the dark, that's better. That's just better, I don't know why, it's just better. If you can scare people in the bright sun, that's a challenge. That just seems really, really cool,
So it's like 30 years since the film was released. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel very old. It makes me feel stunned that much time has gone by. Absolutely, But that's the nature of life. You're constantly in a state of being stunned as you get older. I don't think anybody goes senile. I think they're just stunned, that all this time's gone by. I'm really pleased that people like it, that they've continued to like it, that it's not something that was hip but so out of style and so old-fashioned that, it's kind of cute. You never want your work to be called cute or interesting. Those are the two things. Don't say it's interesting and don't say it's cute. Just say nothing. And so I think it's got legs, it's got legs. They say about plays on Broadway, does it have legs? Can it last? And I think it's lasted because it's not dated. We didn't do a dated thing. We did this setting and these characters who had a certain, American classic Western kind of thing. So the same look could have been made in 1970 or 1980 or 1940 or last year, jeans and boots and pickup trucks and all that stuff. I think that's partly what's kept it fresh, is it just feels like a contemporary movie,
I think if it was made like 10 years later, and they would have had cell phones, which would have been the cutting edge.
Well, that was the big problem. Yeah, that was the worst thing to happen to screenwriters in Hollywood is cell phones. Period. And that's it. I mean, who's in trouble? Well, they can call the cops. Just call 911. So you got to go through these things. You either do period pieces, or you come up with some way where there's no cell service, and and the audience is waiting for that moment. We all fall in the river, and our cell phones are dead. That kind of thing. But you have to do it. You've got to come up with a way that we're on our own. Otherwise, you don't have drama. If you can call the U.S. Marines and the police at any moment to come save you, then that's the end of drama. How about that for a statement?
It's like if it was made like now and they would have cell phones, then if you look at that in 30 years' time, then it will look really dated because there's nothing in it to date.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you're not. All we have is some funky little shortwave radio, and then these sort of seismography thingies, which is actually they all look kind of like 1940-ish, anyways, but. I mean, you see it all the time on TV. You just go, you're watching a movie or a TV show, and you go, I mean, if you're a fan of stuff, you go, I wonder what year this was made. Just look at the computer on the desk, or look at the cell phone they pulled out. Boom, you've got it within 3 years. You've got where they are. I wonder if some studios wouldn't go back and take scenes and digitally remove the big cell phone and put it in, put in an iPhone or something, just so it would be like that colorizing movies. Remember Ted Turner was doing that to make them look more contemporary. So yeah, and though I don't know that was a conscious decision, the sense of let's give it a more classic sense of longevity, the film, the look of the film. It just was right for that setting, for that situation, for those characters, But we do remember doing educational films, which Ron and Steve and I did for years before Steve and I sold Short Circuit. And one of the things was we wanted these little short 16 millimeter movies that were sold to schools to play as long as possible. We wanted, 5 years from now, we'd hope they were still selling copies of these movies, how to brush your teeth, how to read the dictionary, things like that. And so we made sure that the kids, usually there were kids in the movie, that they dressed in not in the hippest hairstyle of the moment, or not with a t-shirt with some band on it, and all of that. That would just date it in a year or two. So it was always like a plain t-shirt, blue jeans or whatever, kind of a universal haircut, whatever, and that would be it. So that maybe 10 years from now, somebody's watching this movie, it's not doesn't seem glaringly out of date. That's all.
What advice would you give to young filmmakers who are inspired by Tremors?
What advice? The first thing I would say is make films. Just make films. Just somehow, and it's so easy now. Make those films. Learn how to edit. Learn. In making the stuff, all you're going to do is make mistakes. You're going to make all the mistakes, and that's how you're going to learn. So keep shooting. Take your iPhone and write a story and go out and shoot. And don't go out and shoot a feature-length thing, a 95-page script. Do a 7 or 8 page short film and do it the best you can, and then learn from your mistakes, and then do another one, and they'll get better and better. You're going to be a filmmaker. Get them, put them online, post them online. Directors now are, even the remotest spots of the world, they're making little movies in their apartment, putting them online. People are watching them. They're talking about them. They're getting into festivals. They're winning awards. And from there you can get to doing a feature film. If somebody's going to put up money, maybe Hollywood, maybe somewhere else, they'll put up money to do a low-budget feature film. You become, a filmmaker who can support himself or herself making movies. That's great. You can go to film school. That's good too. You don't need it. You don't need film school. It costs a lot of money, but if you can do it, that's fine also. But it's much easier than we did, because back when we were in film school in the 70s, film costs a lot of money. We'd be making these movies, we'd have a roll of film. It would be like 3 minutes of film, and you're shooting and you're just going, should I shoot another take? Well, I can't afford it because I've got other everything was, you had to be so economical and so careful and rehearse. But now, you can just do so much stuff. It's a great way to learn, I would take advantage of technology to give yourself a break and do that. Better to do it, I think, than go to film school. Film school is fine, nothing wrong with it. And there's a bunch of stuff you'll learn there too, but it's much better just to do it. Make your movies and let people tell you what they think of them, and you'll learn really fast, I think. That's the way to do it. We had 2 groups at film school. You have the critical studies film students, and then you have the ones who just wanted to make movies. And there was sort of these 2 camps, and it was so funny, and we were production students. So we had no respect for these intellectuals, and they saw us as these sort of Visigoth, slobs who just want to shoot film. So it was kind of funny. It's great if you can bring those together in one person who's got, an academic appreciation of film and film history, and also the talent to make movies. That's great. That's a wonderful, way to be.
Tell us about how Tremors fans approach you and some of the things they ask you about.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I was having my car serviced at my local car place, and I'm waiting in the waiting room, and a woman walks in. Obviously, she's waiting for her car, and she's in medical scrubs, and her blouse was Marvel characters. That was the theme of her blouse. So, being who I am, I struck up a conversation with her, and I said, "Well, you're really into Marvel. You really like that?" "Yeah, I love it. I love Marvel. I love the comic books. I love the films. I really like sci-fi stuff." So we were talking about science fiction and science fiction writing and things. I'm not a big sci-fi fan. I just know a little bit of what I know. But I know a lot more about animation and all of that. So we were talking about science fiction, And she says, you seem to know a lot about science fiction and writing. You know, are you a writer? He says, yeah, I'm a writer. I've written some movies and things. She goes, well, what have you written? And I mentioned the things, and I mentioned Tremors, and she went insane. It was like, she was insane. She just said, I can't believe it. I can't believe you wrote Tremors. You wrote Tremors. I'm from a little town in Montana, a teeny little town. You got that town. That town in the movies is perfect. That's perfect. Those are exactly who live in my little town. She was so pumped up. It was almost embarrassing. And really, can I shake your hand? And I shook the hand of the guy who made Tremors. It was like, I was starting to feel sorry for her. She goes, I'm going to call my mother. I'm going to tell my mother, you know. It turns out she's a surgeon. I thought maybe she was, it doesn't matter. She's like a sophisticated woman. And it was like, wow, you know, you forget this. You don't think about it. People come up to me when they hear, you wrote this or you wrote that, and they're enthusiastic, and I appreciate it, you know. But you do forget it. You forget that these things go out into the world. And I was on the phone once to somebody in Australia. And he goes, you can't believe what's happening. I go, what? He goes, you hear in the back room? I go, my kids are in the back room watching Short Circuit. He put the phone to, I can hear Short Circuit, you know, in a house in Australia. You go, oh, yeah, this stuff goes everywhere. It's in the lives of a lot of people. So it's touching. It's really touching. It just sort of makes you want to be a better person. You know, oh, I got to work hard. This is a special thing. You got to really put everything you've got into it. Don't take it for granted.